Hello, welcome to today's episode of Good and Well. My name is Brittany Hammond, and today I'm so excited because we are going to be talking to Melissa Miller, who is the managing partner of the new Primal. Super excited to talk with her today. She is an incredible woman I have met through social media, which is really exciting. Social media has had such good things happen for me over this past. I've made some great connections during the pandemic. So whoever said the pandemic wasn't, there wasn't good things happening in the pandemic, there are some good things, and that is some friendships, some connections that we're having. So I'm going to invite Miss Melissa to come on and join me. And if you guys have questions at any time during this, remember, you can always and ask in the questions and below in the comments. We're happy to answer anything that you might see. So as soon as we will go. Hello, Melissa.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's so good to see you in person, sort of.
I know, right? Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I always forget that I don't know a lot of the people that I've had on personally. And so I'm like, oh, I feel like I know you because I see all your life. I see everything that's going on social
Yeah,
media. So I'm like, yeah, well, that's my girl. Like,
I
I know
know.
her.
It's like the best internet friends ever.
Right. And I'm like, I know everything about her and she's awesome. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm just super excited because so for those of you who don't know, I kind of said it at the beginning, but I met Melissa. I met you through just social media, through doing Whole30 and doing some work with the new Primal and enjoying all the products that you guys have, which are incredible. If you guys have not checked out the products, you guys need to do that. But through that, started to talk to you, and you and your company have been incredible and have donated to some things to South LA Cafe where I volunteer at. So it's just been a really great connection.
Yeah, community is such a powerful thing that we were talking about this on the team the other day, where it's like, okay, if Brittany posts something and something's important to Brittany, like she's in our community, we're in her community, so it's important to us. So that's something that we believe strongly in.
Yeah, I love that so much. I mean, I was really floored when you were like, "Hey, we'd love to donate. We'd love to give something." I was like, "Oh my gosh, like this isn't something." And I work with, many brands and in and out and stuff, but it's just something that above and beyond, which really stands out to me and just kind of goes the next level, which we'll talk about later on as well about how you guys not only going above and beyond for people that work with you, but also your employees. So we'll get into that as well. But so before we get started, or not, I guess before we get started, but as we get started, I would just like to kind of, if you give a background of how you got into the new Primal, how you got started, how you ended up there, because I think, that just really sets the tone for the rest of everything we've got talking about today.
Yeah, well, I never thought in a million years that I would, be the owner of a food snack brand. I can certainly tell you that. But I met our founder, Jason Burke, about 10 years ago, and we just met through the health and wellness community here in Charleston, South Carolina. And through that community, I knew what he was doing. He was, he had changed his lifestyle, found CrossFit, found paleo,
Mm.
and really was making some changes in his diet. And in the afternoons, he started making jerky as a way to sort of keep him fueled throughout the day. When that 2 o'clock, like, oh my God, I
Yeah,
need
I've
something
been
to
there.
eat. Yeah. So, snacking can be a difficult part of that dietary lifestyle change. So, he started making jerky, and, friends and family started, hey man, will you make me some, jerky? He's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then, long story short, he looks up, there's 60 hydrators going, and he's like, oh my God, I think I have
Yeah,
a business.
right.
Um, yeah. And around that time, I tried to be a stay-at-home mom. And it was, I knew that I needed something else. And so he and I connected about me joining on the team. And obviously I did. I started working in the business for the first couple of months and was like, wow, this is so cool and something I never thought I would be a part of. And so in my early 20s, I was actually involved in a really horrific car accident. And so I took some of the money from my settlement and invested it into the business. And so I was one of the first, investors at the new Primal. That has afforded me, my sort of place here. And I have a board seat. And so I have a voice, my seat's at the table, if you will.
Awesome.
here we are, 8 years later. We have 35 products, a team, and we're still here. So we're still having fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will say I mean I love the products. I put the barbecue seasoning on my eggs every single morning. I'm a
Yeah.
little bit obsessed with it. I'm like, what else can I put this on? You know, I'm like, what can I put this on? Maybe I can put this here. But and the jerky too, which I because for those of you that don't know, there's zero sugar. It's very clean ingredients. It's incredible. So when finding jerky without sugar is very, very challenging. So that's really, it's just the best jerky. It's really incredible.
Thank you.
So have you ever or always wanted to be an entrepreneur? Is that something that has just been ingrained in you, something that's always been in your blood, or is it something that as you kind of started growing, getting into the business world and like noticing things, you're like, oh, I think I'd like to own a business someday?
Yeah, no, not at all. That is not at all how, this journey has, occurred to me, if you will. But, my mom, she owned a business growing up.
Mm,
She always had something, she always had a business. She was always making her own money. And I always really admired that.
yeah.
People loved working for my mom. Like, I feel like her employees just, really admired her. And she was always fun. So, it was a little bit of just knowing that experience.
Mm,
And then I think like looking back, she was kind of teaching me little entrepreneurial skills along the way. But I didn't realize it. Like our house burned down and when I was in third grade.
oh, wow.
And so she and I did essentially like an inventory of our entire house. It's like, okay, well, what is there? How many of that did we have? How
Mm-hmm.
much do we think that's worth? And like doing the math and having to, sort through all of that. And I think it was like a year later, she broke her arm. And while she certainly could have had my dad do all the things, she taught me how to write checks and how to balance a checkbook and, when
Wow.
bills were due and here's when we get paid. Here's when, payments seem to go out. And so,
Right.
yeah, so I don't know that it's anything that I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to be, a business owner when I grew up. But I saw a lot of it through her. So I think when the time came, I mean, I feel like it just kind of arrived to me.
Right.
Made it a little bit easier.
Yeah, and entrepreneurship is very challenging. It's something that I'm kind of trying to find my way into now. And I'm like, this is hard. Like, and I think that, some people, like you said, it was, you had parts that were kind of ingrained into you little by little that you weren't even sure of. And I'm like, I have no idea where to start, what I'm doing. And I'm just like, forget it. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. What should I do? And I'm so used to working for other people. So working for myself, it takes a lot of motivation. It takes a lot of discipline to be able to do something like that, to start a business, to own a business. So that's kudos to you because I am trying that as we're going through the pandemic, and I'm like, I see why like I see why I work for other people. This is really challenging.
Yeah, yeah, it certainly can be. And trust me, I think, probably all entrepreneurs would agree that there's, everyone has that, oh my God, why did I do this? This
Yeah.
is terrible. I don't think I can do this another day. So I think that's, a common trait. The more entrepreneurs that I meet, there's a common thread
Hmm.
in that sentiment for sure.
I'm like, I give up. I'm not making any money, but you keep pushing through.
Yep.
So what are some challenges that you have faced as you've been into entrepreneurship, and especially challenges maybe even more so as a woman specifically?
So I think there's a lot of, I find a judgment, right? It's kind of like what you were saying of, oh man, like, what am I doing? Or like, oh, they're doing it better. Or,
Mm,
all this like comparison, things
yeah.
that happen. Or, for me, it was, my grandma was just like, can you just be a nurse? Or like, can you just be a teacher or something like normal? I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna like be a part of this really cool beef jerky company. And
Right.
she's like, oh Lord. Um, but or even your friends are kind of like,
Mm,
oh, okay, well that sounds cool. But you just do have to do what feels right to you. So I think especially as moms, and if you have children, it's like, oh, what about the kids, or what about
mm,
where are you going to find the time? And so I think those are all questions that come up for female entrepreneurs in
Yes.
particular. But I think it's about like finding people that support you, and finding people that you have a shared vision with, and leaning into those that kind of support system is really important.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually, as I was writing questions, I see that, your mom, you're at soccer, you're doing things sometimes you're like, oh, I coached my son's soccer today. And you do so many things. And in my mind, my first thought is like to ask, like, how do you balance all this? I'm like, but nobody asked that about men. Nobody asked men, how do you do it all? How do you do a million things and make it look so easy? But it's like, that wasn't something that immediately came to my mind because I'm like, gosh, like you do so much. You volunteer, you're a mom, you're a business owner. So that is that crazy. I think part of society has taught us, it's this onus of this on the woman to be, the wife, the mom, the everything. And then when she does also have a business, it's like, wow. But with men, we don't say like, how do you do it all? So how do you think maybe we change the narrative about that? Because it is so, I mean, because I even fell into that trap of thinking, gosh, she does it all. Like I need to ask. And I'm like, no, that's the question that everybody asks.
Yeah, so I think it's a couple different parts for me as we talk about this, but I think we can change the language and the narrative around it, right? So I think it's almost like when you're asking the question, they're not literally you, but just in general,
Right, right.
when people have these thoughts, it's like, oh, well, there must be some sort of imbalance, right? If it
Hmm.
looks hard to balance it, then there must be an imbalance, right? And then it becomes good and bad and right and wrong and
Right.
imbalance and out of balance. And so I think, we can start to sort of change that narrative around the conversation in general, right? And so on the other side of that, I think that there are a lot of traits that serve both, when I'm working, and then
Hmm.
also that same trait can show up when I'm at home, right? And so
Mm.
I think I think women, one of our superpowers is like the ability to take one trait and it flows seamlessly through the
Yeah.
home and the office, right? Where I feel like a lot of times maybe our male counterparts, it's very, they're like, this is in this bucket and this is in this
Right.
bucket,
Right.
and it's probably maybe why we don't ask them, because it's just not how it shows up, or at least a lot in stereotypical ways,
Right.
I would
Right. For
say.
sure.
Yeah, so I think it's about like leaning in, and really I don't have a lot of what I would say like balance, because everything is so interwoven, right? I mean,
Right.
I work with my husband, like our lives are really interwoven between, our children, our family, and the new Primal. And so that's just kind of how it shows up for us. And I'd say just like I'm leaning into the imbalance because it's all kind of one.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, you just make it look so effortless. I will say, 'cause I'm like, she does a lot. Like
Uh,
she's
well,
doing
if
everything.
so when we talk about those strengths, so one of my strengths is I'm really good at strategy. And so
Mm.
if I am really good at strategy, I'm going to be really good at strategy at home and in
Right.
the
Right.
office, right? So like I feel like those are the kind of things that we should actually just be celebrating the hell out of.
Right.
And instead of like, oh, well, how it's, home and work, right? Where it's like,
Hmm.
it's just one person. I'm one person. I have a certain level, certain things that I'm really good at. And then it's like weaving the two lives around those strengths.
Yeah. And I just want to say, because I really love that you're like, I'm really good at strategy. I love when we can say as women that we're really good at something and it not be, well, I think I'm pretty good at, it's like, I'm really good at this. So I just wanted to kind of a side note shout out of that because I think for me, I have a hard time saying I'm really good at XYZ because I feel like I think women are supposed to be more humble and we're like, we can be good at things, but a lot of times we're not like, yeah, I kick ass at this. Like I'm incredible. I'm really great. So I just a little side thing of you just saying like I'm really good at strategy really sticks out to me and really empowers me because I love hearing women be able to say like, oh, my mom said that's exactly what I thought. I just like being able to say that and voice that. It's so incredible to me. So I just wanted to point that out because I think that's something that a lot of women shy away from.
Yeah, and I will say that's a, that's something that's came over time. I don't
Hmm.
know that, me 5 years ago or, 8 years ago would have been able to say that. It's part just getting to know yourself better and being able to identify the patterns where you're like, oh, I keep doing these certain things really well, and so this is my strength, and these things really energize me. So I need to make sure that I'm, spending a lot of time there.
Hmm. I like it. I just really, that just really like gave me a little chills. I'm like, I love
Uh,
when women can just own their stuff and be awesome. Um, so more about women, and I mean it is Women's History Month, so I'm excited to have you here during that. But how do we encourage more women to enter into entrepreneurship and business ownership? When I think there's a space where we're kind of pushed down in the business, we make less money, we don't have the same opportunities, and we have to work so hard to break the glass ceiling. So how do we encourage more women to get into business ownership?
Yeah, well, I definitely think that it's, just looking around you, right? It's like, who is your immediate support system, right? Even things like, who are you following on Instagram, right?
Mm,
It's like finding people that have the same, goals, visions, kind of dreams that you do. There are plenty of women entrepreneurs that I know, and sort of, putting yourself in the right headspace, even if it's something as simple as following people that energize you on social media, right? So I think that's part of it. And then I would say for me, it's a lot of thinking of like, what is my limiting belief, right? It's like,
so
why
good.
am I, why am I, do I have reservations when I think about owning a business, right? And then kind of working through those hurdles, those sort of mental hurdles. Um, and I also think that it's important. I think about like for some people, it's like I'm gonna invent a product, or I'm gonna do something to help myself, or I'm gonna do something to help my community, or I'm just looking for additional money, right? Like I need another
Right.
revenue stream. And when I think about money, another thing I would say that women, typically it's like, oh, I just want enough money to, do whatever. It's like another
Right.
thing where, as you were mentioning things of that sort earlier. But, when we first started our business, I feel like if we got $1, I was like hanging on to it for dear life of like,
Right.
oh my
Right.
God.
Right.
And I had a real sense of scarcity around money. And so I think it's important to sort of identify what labels of like scarcity are you putting on things, and
Mm-hmm.
then do some work around that, so that way when you run up in those moments where you get the dollar bill and you're hanging on to it for dear life like I was,
Right.
you can start to unpack and figure out how to become more comfortable in those scenarios. And for me, that it was like I just envisioned money, and I still do. I envision money just like the ocean, right?
Yeah.
It comes and then it
And it
goes, and it
goes.
comes and it
Yeah.
goes, and trust me, this is not the part where I'm like, oh, I just meditated for 21 days
Right.
and
Right.
then all the money started pouring in, to
Right.
my business. This is not that episode of that life.
Right.
But what it did do is it created a shift in my mindset around money,
Mm-hmm.
and I got hyper focused on what would bring revenue to the business, and then working off of that, and instead of saying, oh man, we really need this piece of software and it costs $1,000, or like we really need to invest $1,000 into our business because of this, instead of me being like, oh man, like that just sucks, like we don't have the money. It was an immediate mind shift of like, how am I going to go out and create $1,000 of income into our business so that way
Mm-hmm.
I can get it? And so for me, that was just doing some work around the inner dialogue around
Right.
moments of scarcity. Has been tremendously beneficial for me.
Yeah, that's such good advice, because I think that's part of my reservations about when I'm trying to do like create my business and things like that. I'm like, I'm like, well, I have my podcast. It made like $3 from ads, like, but
Yeah.
but it's such a such a thought, and it's like you just have to think about it that way. And I really like that advice there. So one of the things that I really admire about you as a business owner, and during the elections, I know you guys gave people time off, and you yourself worked polls, and I just think that's incredible because I think it speaks to giving people experiences and making sure that they're a part of what we had going on with the elections, and I'm curious as to like what how important it is to you, one, to foster that type of environment where you're giving people the chance to be a part of social movements and everything. And then how have you seen, what are some positive outcomes that you've seen through doing things like that?
Yeah, so I think one of the great things about owning your own business is that you get to create whatever sort of environment you want. And for me, a big part of that is like what is the collective care of the group need and want, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so we felt like it was really important for the general election, like we have, it's a paid day off, and even local elections, like next year we'll do a half day, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so you can, whether you want to go vote in person, whether you want to just have the mental space to not have to think about work, because elections can be, very personal for people. And
Right.
so whether, you're watching the results, whether you're not watching the results, like whatever
Right.
you need, just know that there's, you're not going to be obligated to think about work that day, right? Or
Right.
like in my case, it was really important to me to be a part of this. And
Mm-hmm.
so I signed up to be a poll manager. And so I got to, one, I feel like help our community because so many of poll managers are older. They're older
Mm-hmm.
people
Right.
in our communities. And so with the pandemic, it's, you don't have as many people wanting to participate and be,
Mm-hmm.
in the general public, understandably so.
Right.
And so that was just a way that I could help because I knew there was a true need for it. And it was very cool to see, like with my own eyes, like how it all works, like from
Right.
setup to
I mean,
close. Yeah,
that's so
to
interesting. Yeah.
yeah. So to me, that was just a really cool experience. And, hopefully, maybe one person that I know will, be inspired to go out and be a pool manager next time. Because it was
Yeah.
such a cool experience. And, again, as like a business owner, though, it's just about giving people space to do whatever they want, and so whether, yeah, you go vote, whether you don't do it at all, or
Right.
you go volunteer, whatever that looks like for you, it won't be an obligation for you to, come to work that day.
Yeah, I think it's and then there was a couple companies that I saw doing that over the time, and I just think it's so awesome because I mean, now I'm working, I'm sort of back to work, but I was in a job I'm a fitness instructor, so it's super flexible. I can kind of do what I need to do when I need to do it. But it's really cool to see, like, I remember when I worked a 9 to 5, and that wasn't an option. That wasn't something that I could do. And especially in something like this year's election, particularly would have been really nice. Like if you work
Yeah.
somewhere to have some time to kind of process, or a week, because apparently that's how long it took to do everything. But,
Yeah.
I mean, it is so cool to see. And it's something that as I was looking, I really admired because I mean, it is a chance to be a part of, democracy in your community and all those things. But not a lot of companies take that into account, or they're like, oh, you have an hour to go, like in the past places that I worked, like, oh, you have an hour to go vote. And it's like, well, it's just
Yeah.
really cool that you guys really invest so much in your employees and give them the time to have that. I think, even now, you're seeing more emphasis on mental health,
Hmm.
and even people bringing in like ways like people that come in and help their employees have more contact in their health, and they get discounts in health insurance if they have certain things, and things that are really allowing people to get healthier and stronger so that you do enjoy your job, and then maybe you do have less days off, sick days, because you're getting time off as you need to really actually take care of those things.
Yeah. I think as, as a business owner, you have to constantly be investing in your people, right? And that,
Hmm.
I think it looks very different than, after I graduated college and it was, oh, like here's your 2 weeks off. And that was,
Right.
maybe some health insurance. But now it's like, oh, things like having flexibility to work in the office or out of the office,
Hmm.
or, hey, is there a discount for, any sort of mental health services, or,
Right.
more PTO, and getting people to take their PTO.
Hmm.
And like it is not a bad thing to go on vacation. Like you
Yeah.
have the time, go. I get that you love working here, but also like
Right.
when is your next vacation time? So yeah, I think it's about like the holistic view of
Hmm.
your people, because at the end of the day, we're all just people that, come to work, and we all leave and come and go with different things. And so for me, it's like looking at the holistic view of a person. Because at the end of the day, I don't know, I just want people to be happy and like
Right.
coming to work. And, if there are ways that we can be supportive outside of the office, like giving the people the day off for election day, like let's do it.
Yeah, well, I hope there's lots of entrepreneurs listening who are thinking about building a business, and they're listening and taking note, because I think that's so great. And really, I mean, loving where you work is such a huge thing, and being felt like you're being heard and seen, and that's so incredible. I know a lot of places are instilling like volunteer time off, which I think is so incredible, as well. Just giving people, as I've volunteered through the cafe, I've met some people who were there with work, like, oh, we get an hour to volunteer however often. And I'm like, that is so cool. Like, that is so awesome, and something that I never had in a job before. So it's so cool to see.
Yeah, well, I think what business owners are finding is that people are so multifaceted, and there's so many things outside of the immediate work that are important to them, right? So, we had a team volunteer day, I think was that last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. But, if people have another organization that they're super passionate about, like, yes, I'm for sure going to give you the time off to go do that, right? I mean, I think that's so, so important.
Yeah, I just love that, as thinking of employees as whole people, as opposed to employees as just what they are when they're in your vicinity or in your building, or however on your Zoom now, I guess, because everything's digital. But
Yeah.
thinking about that employee as a whole person is so important. And I just love how you're talking about that holistic view of that person. And that's I think that's, I mean, I appreciate looking at it. I don't work for you, but I love watching, but I love seeing everybody that does work for you that I do follow, and I'm like, that's really cool. They have really cool jobs. They have a great
Oh,
boss, so
thank
it's very
you.
awesome. Um, so my other question is, as a business owner, and obviously through through the recent Black Lives Matter and everything that's been going on just in the social climate in general, and diversity inclusion. So how have you fostered diversity and inclusion within your brand behind the scenes, and then how is that coming up in what we get to see? Because I see, I've seen you guys did a really great thing during Black History Month, where you were talking about different icons, black icons, who maybe weren't as well known, and I learned some things, and I was like, oh, like I had no idea who that was, or I've never heard of that person. So how are you doing that behind the scenes, and then how is that showing up in front of what we actually get to see?
Yeah. So I think it's a mix. Some of it is stuff that, people may never see. And then, some
Hmm.
of it is more, consumer facing, that you do see. But, I'll be the first to say we have a lot of work to do. Like we are very much like a work in progress. But, sometimes it looks like, straight up financial commitments. Last month we sponsored the Whole 30 Community Cares
Hmm.
Summit, for the kitchen table talk, right?
Yeah, that was
And
incredible.
so, yeah, it was like, hearing all the different experiences from, members from the Black community, and how, what their lives have looked like, and how food intersects all of that, was really cool. So when, they brought us the opportunity, we were like, oh, absolutely, we want to sponsor this. And so,
Hmm.
sometimes it's things like that. Sometimes it's about supporting Black owned businesses. And, like one example is you got one of our masks, right? Our
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
branded mask, and
Hmm.
like our meat shredders.
Yes, that I was
Um,
like, what do I do
al-
with these, Melissa? How? I'm like, my brother's
also,
like, I think it's like for, I'm like, it's not for your hair. They're, it's like a, they're, they,
yeah.
they do meat. So that's something like that.
Yeah, or like the Wolverine.
Yeah,
I saw some Wolverine, claws.
they're
But
awesome.
so we specifically sought out. We were looking for a black-owned business that did swag, and so we
Mm,
were able to find one, and that was really important to us. And so, or over Christmas we. I've been using Sacred Space, their candles, for a long time.
hmm
And so that felt very much like, oh, well, I'm already buying this stuff personally. So, like, we should just buy it for, the business and stuff that we're going to
Right.
use. So sometimes I think, it shows up in ways like that. And then, I also think about, we just outfitted our website to make the content more accessible.
hmm
For people that have hearing and visual impairments. And so things like that were really important to us, like doing alt text on social media,
hmm
just, different ways that may not always be so obvious, but, working on stuff that is important to us internally is, things that, we have certainly been talking about for a while now.
Right. Yeah, I did. I recently learned. I mean, I'd seen alt text on people's Instagrams. I'm like, I don't like. How do you do that? And then when I found it, I was like, wow, because I never thought about it. And I talked about this with a couple episodes ago when I was talking to Lauren, who was someone I had on. We were talking about autism and the autistic community.
Yeah, that was a
And
great
yeah,
episode.
yeah, thank you. And she was talking about just the alt text and all the things you can, all the ways to make things more accessible. And I was like, wow, I've never thought about all of the ways that are things are, accessible to me but not to others, that I'm just like, oh yeah, like no big deal. And so I've actually been trying to take the time to write alt text, and it takes a little bit longer, but it's like, if that can reach one more person or mean something to one more person, I think that's huge. And so just, yeah, someone said you guys are incredible, you've thought of everything, and that's true. Like, you really do have to. I mean, I haven't thought about my own website and how it's accessible, because it's just things that you actually do have to have the conversations about. And as we're growing, and it's been so incredible during the pandemic to see so much growth in different places that we haven't really thought of at the very beginning. And I think you were one of the companies, because for those of you that don't know, when Black Lives Matter happened, I was like, Miss, contact all of the brands, like, statement. And I'm like, excuse me, what is your, like, what do you think about this? You haven't made a statement, and all of that. But you guys were someone, a group that came out very quickly and had a great response. And I think for me, I was that person that was like, I have questions. But it's just awesome to see that you guys, you really have put in the effort, and a lot of intersectional things as well. Just a lot that you've been putting out there has been incredible and so supportive. And so that just is a great testament to what you guys do there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it just feels like we're constantly learning. Like, we had someone questioned us on our packaging, and I'm like, oh my
Mm,
God, our packaging is beautiful. Like, what could
yeah.
you ever possibly say, But they brought up a really good point about the contrast of the colors. And so
Mm,
I was like, it never occurred to me, because I don't have a visual impairment, that someone
right.
else might not be able to, the colors are too close, right? And so on this newest round of our like barbecue beef thins, we changed the color of like the ingredient panel, just so people, I mean, I can read it fine, but
Right.
again, it's not about me. It's about making sure that content, and whether that is website packaging, alt text, whatever that looks like, is accessible to as many people as possible.
Yeah, that's something that I wouldn't even think of either, because it's just not like, when it's not something that affects you, it doesn't come top of mind. But that's awesome that you guys are listening and trying to make those changes, because I think that's part of, brands as they grow. And things that I've noticed is that when I did speak out and say things, like, who was like, oh, thank you for the conversation, thank you for pointing that out to us, because there were some companies that said, oh, we didn't realize that people cared what we had to say about this. We didn't realize that our voice mattered in this, because we make XYZ. We're a food company, or we're this and that. And I'm like, well, I spent a lot of dollars there. So to know that you stand by me and you support me really means a lot to me. And so some of them, after I felt like a big bully, but after I had said some things, they were like, thank you for pulling that to our attention, because we really didn't think about it. So it's that piece of, as a consumer, understanding that maybe it's not something that is intentionally done. You know, it's something that maybe they need, like they just need to hear your voice. And if you say something, then they're more than happy to make those changes. Or to do something that's a little bit more accommodating, which is what obviously you guys are doing, which I think is incredible and another testament to you guys, because it's not easy to change branding and packaging and coloring. You know, that's something that's not exactly, you know, the easiest thing to do. So,
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's just about, for us, it's, we're trying to at least look at it before, someone even brings it to us. Like,
hmm,
where's our bias showing up when we, say this or do that, or like in this case, packaging. It just never occurred to us because it.
yeah. So in being a brand, I didn't put this question down, but when I sent my questions to you, but it is coming up in my mind. Um, so you guys do stand up for, you know, have stood up for Black Lives Matter. You guys have been vocal and, you know, pride, and like you guys are very open and inclusive. Have you struggled, or has there been a lot of pushback, or how has that been as a business owner and kind of trying to deal with, deal with the things, that the pushback that comes from being vocal and being a supportive and inclusive brand?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for us, our community has really rallied around things that, we've said. And so, a lot of that stuff, the kind of conversations that you see, we have really not had any pushback,
That's
maybe
incredible.
some here and there. But um, again, I think when you look at some of the fundamental things, it's about injustice, right? And so
Hmm.
whether that's where we're talking about, food deserts and food justice,
Right.
as that relates to marginalized communities, or if you're talking about, social justice issues, there's a fundamental layer of injustice that I think a lot of people can get behind.
Yeah, that's so true. And how important do you think it is for a business to really just show where they stand and not be apologetic about it? And you know, I think part of why people stand by is like, oh, they made their statement clear. I'm good on this. I understand where they stand, and that's kind of it. How important do you think it is for businesses to take a stand, or do you think like it's kind of, you know, like you do you, and if you want to take a stand, but or is it like you think it's important for businesses to take a stand on things?
Well, I mean, I think it's important. I mean, we obviously, did that.
Hmm.
And, I can only, I have one business and I
Right.
can speak for ours. But I think a lot of people just want to know where you stand. And so if you, make food and, a lot of the efforts that we're working on are around food justice. And so it's important for us to be at that intersection.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely can see all the work that you guys put in, and like I said, even I sent you. You guys did the national or the International Women's Day image that was super cool and had all the colors and the women changed, and it was really neat.
Yeah.
So I enjoy seeing what you guys post, and really being intentional about that, and not just saying like, oh, here's a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. You know, I think a lot of companies have relied on that for so long and continue to rely on that, thinking, oh, well, this is going to be enough, or this is, you know, this does what it needs to do. And so it's really cool to see a company that that is, you know, especially those that are not Black owned companies, companies that are ran by white people, that are able to be an ally and be a good ally, that stand up. And so for me, from being a woman of color, it's just a lot to see that. There is an easy way to do it, or a way that's less controversial, or, you know, just a way that you can put your foot in and say like, okay, this is where we stand, but you guys really, I think, stand behind it and really, you know, put your money where your mouth is, and you just really go all in. So as a woman of color, I appreciate seeing that in what you guys do.
Well, thank you. We try really hard to be really intentional, with our words because they matter so much. And, the impact really matters, even, despite what your intent may be.
Hmm.
And so we're trying, and again, we still have lots of work to do.
Yeah, we all do,
But
you know. Still learning. There's
yeah.
still I still learn so much through all of this that
Well, I
I'm
think
like, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the more, lived experiences you hear from other people, particularly ones that, don't look like you, didn't grow up where
Hmm.
you grew up, like, the more I feel like it just, the ego drops and the sort of mind expands, right? And
Yeah.
so that's just something that, we're really aware of.
Yeah, learning. I've learned through all this, you can't say anything wrong. You just say it, and if someone's like, "That's actually not the way you say that," then you're like, "Okay, thanks. Thank you for
Yeah.
helping me, and I'm happy to learn." And for me, I've been happy to help people learn during this time. So it's good to see people that are up for that. So my final question is just, what's the best advice you've been given about entrepreneurship that you can share with us, or advice that you have for someone that might be listening that's like, I really want to start a business, or just, or look into it at least.
Yeah. So actually, my husband and I were talking about this earlier, and this is a really really tough question, but I think it does boil down to of you better be really passionate about
Mm,
what you're getting ready to get into, right? Because it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of sacrifices, and just a lot. You're going to spend a lot of time there. So whether
mhm.
you're giving up your 40-hour work week to jump into your entrepreneurial journey, make sure you're in the boat you want to be.
Yeah,
um, yeah.
that's great advice, because I know it speaks to me, because I'm like, like, I had times where I'm like, I'm just working all through the night. I can work at 8 p.m. I can work whenever. And when I was building my website, I'm like, yeah, this is great. And then once I had it built, and I was like, now I have to actually do something. I'm like, oh, do I like it that much? Am I that
Yeah.
passionate about it? Do I
Well, and I think it's
really want to
also
do
like, it's also, not letting perfect get in the way of good, right?
it?
So like if you need to do it for a couple of years before you quit your job and, throw in the towels to go all
Right,
in, that's fine too. And everyone doesn't have to grow, a brand, a nationwide brand, it's
right.
like maybe you're just serving the purpose for what you need.
Yeah,
And, maybe that's you and a couple of friends, or what. It just can look so different. And, I hope that people, if you do have an inkling to try, to just try. And so if it works out, great. And if it doesn't, but you won't know unless you try.
right. Unless you try. Yeah, I watch a lot of Shark Tank, and I'm like, man, those people are tough, because they bring they're like, here's who I love so much, and they're like, nope, and you're like, oh God, like,
Yeah.
it's a lot of no's and being
Hmm.
turned down, but I mean, ultimately, you still have to believe in that product, and there's so many of them that go on to still be successful, even if none of the sharks invest or anything, which I think I mean, the great thing is getting on there, because I'm like Googling, I'm like, do they still exist? Can I buy that?
Yeah.
So I'm like, you still did your job. You still got me hooked. But it is speaks to that passion of like these people, like even after getting turned down, even after being told no, like you still have to have that desire and want to continue and keep pushing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're going to get plenty of no's, and
Yeah.
that's fine. And you'll get, people. I think we have, the best tasting sauces and, condiments out there, but, inevitably somebody won't like it, and
Yeah.
that's okay too.
Yeah.
You
You're like,
know,
whatever.
just grow the thick skin.
Yeah, no, you guys have great, and like I said, again, if you guys are just joining or haven't heard everything, they have incredible products. I use that freaking barbecue or buffalo seasoning on everything.
So
I
good.
really do try to find other things to put it on. I'm like, I don't know if this flavor profile works, but it's cool.
Whatever.
Like, right? I'm like, this is Thai, and it's fine. So I
Right.
put it on.
Buffalo goes with everything.
Right, I know. It's my favorite flavor. I think we talked about this when I did the new Primal show with you guys on that. I'm like, buffalo flavor is hands down the best flavor of like any flavor. So I agree. It
Yeah.
goes with anything. I mean, I never would have thought to put it with eggs, but I'm like, eggs,
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
Sauce,
Eggs,
cool.
avocado, just
Right.
book it. It's good.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining. If you want to give anybody where they can find you guys. If you just want to kind of give a plug, I see everybody writing everything. It always works. Yes, we got a lot of Buffalo fans here. So,
Yeah, yeah. So you can follow us at the New Primal on all of our social media channels, and that's newprimal.com. It's the best way to reach us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and just giving us all of the details about entrepreneurship. And I especially wanted to talk to you because you are a female business owner. And I just think that is so important, especially during this month, but always for us to just see women that own businesses and women that are successful business owners, because I think we don't always get to see that. We don't always get to talk to them. It's kind of like, oh, well, you know, you have a national brand and I've never spoken. I have, some small business owners, but I've never really spoken to like someone that owns a national brand. So appreciate your wisdom and everything that you've shared with us.
Well, thank you. I was flattered that you wanted me to be here. So
Of
I was like,
course. I'm
oh,
like,
wait, is she talking to me? She want me
and
to do
I was
this?
like, I think I'm gonna ask her. I don't know if she'll have time or if she'll want to, but I'm just gonna ask. So
No,
thank
great.
you
Thank
so much.
you.
I really appreciate it, and just like so much wisdom and so many gems that you dropped. So I look forward to listening again and writing it down when I can, when I have, I'm not actually talking. I can write down all the tips that you said. So
All right. Well, thank you so much.
thank you. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.